I can sit down at 76 years of age. Getting up's the problem.
You're not 76, are you?
Next month.
God bless you. I'm Ryan Perrotte, the head men's volleyball coach currently for the Purdue Fort Wayne Mastodons. With me, Mr. Arnie Ball, who was the head coach for 35 years of the IPFW men's volleyball program. The first question that I have is, how did volleyball start at IPFW?
How did it start?
How did it start?
Gosh, that'll take the whole bit. That'll take the whole time.
How did it start?
It started because I was a teacher at Paul Harding High School, and we had boys volleyball. And some of my players came out to IPFW, IUPU, FW back then, and were students. And they came to me and said, how about if we have a club team at IPFW? I said, let me think about it for a second. I'm coaching baseball, boys and girls volleyball, teaching full time, and I got 3 kids. The answer is yes. Let's do that. So there were 3 of them, Paul Wist, Colin Leiter, and Dan Scott. And we recruited 3 other kids off the street or friends they knew. And that's how we got started.
So you were at Harding High School, Paul Harding High School at the time. How did you get hired then to work at IPFW back in the day?
Well, it wasn't very smart on IPFW's part to hire me because I never left, you know. But we started that club team in '79, and then we officially became a varsity team in '81, which is the 40th year. And I came because I got a little disgruntled teaching at the public school, and IPFW needed a sports information director, somebody to oversee the athletic training program, the intramural program, and to coach girls women's volleyball. And of course then I had the men's club team already started. So I interviewed, and they decided that I could do all those things at one time, and said, by the way, we'll just throw this caveat in. How about if we make the men's program a varsity program? And I went, that's what I wanted in the first place. So that's how I got started.
Where did you all practice or play your matches in club? Because this facility, the Hilliard Gate Sports Center, hadn't been constructed yet.
Correct. We practiced at, the women practiced at Concordia Seminary. And we played our games at the seminary. As a matter of fact, one of my female players would remind me every once in a while, who married Paul Wist, by the way, that there was an incident that took place. There was an overhang at the seminary over the court, that somehow or another a chair hit that ceiling and came down and almost hit her in the head. I don't remember that happening. Yeah, I do remember that happening, actually. That happened. Back when you could throw chairs and you didn't get ostracized like Bobby Knight did. But the men's team practiced at New Haven Junior High, over at the old New Haven High School, where I coached basketball. And so they let us go in there in the evening and practice, and the men's matches were played there also. And we played some at the seminary, some at the New Haven Junior High, and the girls didn't all play at the seminary until this place was built. And a little bit of a story about the New Haven Junior High. I said I coached basketball there when I taught there, but the rafters had been sprayed with asbestos. I know you can't do that today, but they've been sprayed. So every time the ball hit the rafter, we'd have to sweep up the floor because the asbestos all fell on it. That's probably why I got cancer.
Who was some of your matches against, or who did you play during those club years? Were you able to have outside competition at all?
Oh yeah, we actually played in the MIVA club division. So we played Michigan State, Bowling Green, and we played some of the varsity teams. Ball State played us. Ohio State didn't play us, but Ball State played us. Erlen played us. You know, schools like that. And then we go to tournaments. We actually went to a tournament down in Athens, Ohio, which is the University of Ohio University. I think that's what it is. And we had 7 players and me in one little van, and we drove all the way down, rolled out, played all day, and came back home. We did that a lot, actually.
Wow.
But that was how we started.
And then the transition, 2 years in, from 79 to 81, the transition to go from the club division into the MIVA. How did that process go?
Well, it was pretty easy, because the MIA was looking to expand, and we transitioned into that caveat of a varsity program, and so the MIVA was very anxious to take us. Geographically, at that time, it was, excuse me, Earlham and George Williams, which is in Chicago.
Williams, that's right.
And let's see, it had been Ohio State, Ball State, us, and Bowling Green, I think at that time had maybe a varsity team, I'm not sure. But we were set right in the middle. So, and of course with my affiliation with Ball State, having played there, it was very easy. And the other thing was we were an easy win. A very easy win.
Do you remember the very first match that you coached at the club level to start? The first tournament you went to? Do you remember that? And do you also remember the very first MIVA contest you coached in? What was that like?
Boy, that goes back a long way. I'm not sure about the club season, but other than the fact that when we first started the club program, a gentleman named Brent Berger. I don't know whether you know that name or not. Unfortunately,
yes,
he just passed away.
Justin Berger's father.
Yes,
yes,
and he just passed away. We took his dad's motorhome. That's how we traveled, in a big motorhome. But I think it was at Michigan State in a club tournament. And of course, most of the time when we played in that club with that club group, we went to tournaments because we couldn't afford to go to a single match.
Oh, okay.
We didn't have any money. We were just a club program with very little resources, and so we didn't do very much of that. The first varsity program might have been at Ball State, but I'm not sure about that, Ryan. That's been a long time ago, and I can remember a couple trips to Ball State where we were lucky to score 4 or 5 points the whole match, let alone, in the 3 or 4 matches or sets. But I really don't remember.
When this building was opened in '81, do you remember the first match you played here at the Gate Sports Center?
I remember the first women's match.
The first women's match then, played here?
Mm-hmm. We played on that court over there because there were no bleachers. And we played Mary Ann College. And the fans sat on the bleachers boards that were stacked up. There weren't bleachers, they were bleacher boards, there's stacks of bleacher boards.
Uh-huh.
And that's the very first event played in this building.
Wow.
And we won 3-0.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm not sure about the men's team.
That's awesome.
Because, at that time we'd already played some events, and it was in the fall, so it would have had to have been in the spring when we played, and I'm not sure who the first one was.
That's right.
Could have been anybody.
How did recruiting work back then? You said you started off with 7 players. How did you get to expand the roster once you made that transition into the MIVA conference? Well, especially in the early days.
The best thing that happened for us in the beginning for recruiting was the University of Cincinnati canceled their program. Cincinnati had a program back then, and they canceled the program, so half the team transferred up here. That was the best recruiting crew I ever had. And I encouraged Cincinnati to, no, I didn't do that. But, so that's where we ended up getting kids from outside of Fort Wayne, literally, because they were looking for a place to go. So Rex Hours came, Tony Lasita came, Billy Anderson, the very first Afro-American player I had, came. They all came from Cincinnati. Rick Daly went to Ball State, and a couple other kids went to Ball State. And so in the beginning, we just had local kids. I mean, just because back then, we had high school boys volleyball in Allen County.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was, there were a lot of teams. I mean, Woodland had a team, New Haven had a team, Harding had a team, Cherubusco had a team, Leo had a team. There were a lot of teams. So, you know, I could actually recruit pretty good locally because a lot of those kids were non-football kids. They were basketball kids. So they were pretty athletic. So that's where our original recruiting days started. But then when Cincinnati did that, then we get a kid from South Bend and we get a kid from Columbus, Ohio. Tony Lucida was from somewhere down south, I'm not sure where. So now all of a sudden we get a little more finger out into the volleyball community, and it just gradually matriculated out.
And we were a Division II school at that time period?
Yes, correct.
What was scholarships like during the early years when you first started? Did we have very little to, or none maybe, when we first started?
The very first scholarships here at IPFW were $500 for the men's volleyball program, $500 for the women's volleyball program, and I think $1,500 for basketball, each of the basketball. Wow. That was the first money we had.
Wow.
Period.
Oh my goodness gracious.
No more. No less.
And no less too. As you move through the 80s, the team gets better and better. Then you get your first All-American in Lauren Gebert, a local kid too, as you talked about. What was that transition like when all of a sudden the competition started to lose, you started to win, and now you're getting All-American recruits?
Well, Lauren Gebert was a local product. He's from New Haven. So he wasn't somebody that we recruited from, well, where? But he, not only was he our first All-American, but he was the only player in the history of the program, up until today, that ever got a chance to play on a Russian national team. In 1982, or 81, 82, somewhere in there, in that season, we had the Russian national team come to our campus to play us. And Gebert was part of that team. And the Russian team never jumped to spike or block. And I think we scored 5 points, maybe. And we had over 1,000 people in here to watch. It was a great crowd. And so after the 3 games were over that we played, they came and said, we would like to scrimmage so people can see us jump and play the game, but they only had 11 players. So they had to get one from us. And Gebert was who they selected. So he actually scrimmaged with the Russian team. Of course, people cheered, and it was awesome.
How did you get the Russians to come here in that time period?
Well, back then they were always looking to come to the U.S. to go on a domestic tour, collegiate domestic tour. And I don't know, our chancellor was very open to it. And so we recruited dollars within the community to get them to come. And they came and they stayed about a week and practiced, trained here, and then played us.
Wow. Oh, wow.
It was, I mean, I can tell you lots and lots of stories about that trip. All of which were very reminiscing for me, because I got to spend a lot of time with our coach, with our head of delegation, and of course then when my son played there, I got to go back over there and tell them about those stories, and they all laughed and go, "Oh, that was a long time ago." I said, "Yeah, I know." But
that had to be such an amazing experience.
Yeah,
That's
it was
amazing.
awesome. And we got a lot of media coverage, and it's cool when that kind of stuff happened. Once again, with Gebert becoming an All-American, your name gets out there just a little bit, and nobody still knew who an IPFW was. You know, it's still hard to sell today, but they were beginning to understand that we had a volleyball team that could contribute to the men's volleyball community.
Yeah, and at this time, the women are having success. You're coaching the women, still in sports information, the AD. How is all this being balanced, and a family at home? How is all this being balanced during the 80s when the success starts coming?
I'm say this, but it's a good thing I had my kids already, because I wouldn't have ever had kids doing all that stuff. I wouldn't have had time. But it's what it was, Ryan, because we didn't have staff to do all the things that needed to be done. You know, I oversaw athletic training, I oversaw sports information, intramurals, coached both teams, and was the AD. And at that time, we almost got kicked out of the GLVC because we didn't have enough athletes. We didn't have enough female athletes to put enough teams together to be part of the league. So I had to go through that whole thing too. Okay. That was a very difficult time for us just to keep athletics alive, let alone grow and develop. But we had really good local women's athletes. Most of them are still around here. And they bought into the training regimen we put in. And at that point, the men's team was growing a little bit. And we did lots and lots of things together. I mean, lots of things together. Almost to the point that we ended up with not too many, but we ended up with a lot of marriages because they got together, you know? And that was okay because they fed off one another. You know, the guys that come to support the girls that come to support the guys. Next thing you know, they're bringing their friends, bringing their parents, and we're getting good crowds for both programs, and we're winning. So it was really a neat time frame in the middle to late 80s when our men's team got to the point where it could compete, and the women's team was already competing and going to the NCAA tournament.
Because the women won, I think, 4 in a row, maybe like 84 to
something
80,
like that.
8 somewhere in there.
We went to the NCAA tournament 3 times while I was coaching the women.
In the 80s.
And you know, and once again, you get that exposure. And of course, now the local media is picking up on it because you're going to the NCAA tournament, and they didn't care what Division II or Division I, Division III back then. You were going to the tournament.
Right.
And so we got a lot of attention. Once again, that helps recruiting.
And then speaking of recruiting, then in 86, 87, Jay Goldstein comes here. You recruit Jay Goldstein, 2-time Player of the Year. And in that time frame, in 1988, how did you come to the decision to put in a bid to host the NCAA Men's Volleyball Championships in Fort Wayne?
We've been talking about trying to do some things like that in order to get some recognition for our campus and our community. And that was a chance to get some national exposure. So Randy Brown over at the Coliseum worked with us, and Dan Gebhardt worked his tail off to put all that stuff together and put those proposals together, knowing that for us to get it, probably there's no chance in hell. But we had such a good proposal, and we had the Coliseum to play in. And we had to guarantee so much money, and the community stepped up and provided those dollars so we could provide that guarantee that the NCAA would make money no matter if we only have 2 people in the stand. And so we sent that proposal in, and they came back and said, wow, this is pretty awesome. We've not had proposals like this before. It was back before you did all this television and bidding and all that kind of stuff. We'd like to host it in Fort Wayne. And so we got that tournament, and then we got lucky. We got really lucky. We didn't play in it. Santa Barbara and Ball State and USC and George Mason were the 4 teams. But the reason we got lucky was that Tom Selleck's stepson played for USC. So Tom Selleck came to the tournament. And we had a big crowd. I mean, we did. We had almost 8,000 people. Wow. But most of them were coming to see Tom Selleck. They didn't care about volleyball. But volleyball happened to be very good. And so we had to bring him in through the back door and all kinds of stuff. It was unbelievable. But anyhow, and then of course we were so successful with it that we were able to do it multiple other times down the road.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Did you play against Tom Selleck too at Nationals?
Yes.
Because you played for many, many years at Adult Nationals. And
I don't know whether it's going to be X-rated or not, and I guess I really don't care. My claim to fame with Tom Selleck is he and I stood next to one another with a urinal. He was there and I was here. True story.
So, 1991, what I call is the start of the golden years. Because what I believe, and I could be wrong, that's the breakthrough year when you win the MIVA championship to go to the NCAA tournament. in Hawaii, and you do it, sweet as it is, at your alma mater at Ball State down in Muncie. Can you talk about the year of 1991, and number one, how magical it was, and then the experience to beat Ball State in Ball State to go to the national championship tournament in Hawaii?
You know, that rivalry was obviously very intense. So intense that in '91, at the final tournament, you'd be really proud. The IPFW Mastodon whipped on the Ball State Cardinal. The two mascots got into it. Yeah, the mascots. And the Mastodon pummeled the Cardinal. That's how intense that rivalry was. But obviously that year was very, very special for a couple reasons. Well, for a lot of reasons. Fred Malcolm and Tony Looning were the two guys that really, in the late 80s, along with Jay Goldstein, really helped get our program over the hump. And they were both tenacious leaders of our team. And that was their senior year. So it was awesome for those two guys who had came into our program and really helped with Jay jump it up over, and then to be able to win, and to be able to win at Ball State. And as you mentioned, the tournament, the NCAA tournament was in Hawaii. So when we got to Ball State in the old gym, you never ever saw the old gym.
No.
But in the old gym where I played, actually, they probably had 4,000 or 5,000 people there, and they all had Hawaiian leis on because they were going to Hawaii. Well, they didn't get to go. We beat them in 5 sets, and I think it was 15-13 the fifth set, and Fred Malcolm hit a ball out of the back row, and they dug it and put it back over, and Loy, I knew where the ball was going. Loy set Fred again, and he buried it, and our people came running out of the crowd, and the two mascots, I don't know what they did then, but it was awesome, and I have a video of it, and after it was over, I'm wandering around going, what just happened here? The people are hugging and going over, I'm going, what? I don't know what happened here. I was so dumb, so stunned, I guess, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a magical year for us, and obviously I was so happy for Fred and Tony because Lloyd got to go on and play along with our additional Puerto Rican kids who we recruited at that point. But Fred and Tony were really, when you talk about Jay winning the first MIVA tournament, you know, he's the primary reason for that to happen, his leadership and the ability to play. And then Fred and Tony are the reason we got to go in '91.
And then what was that experience like to go to Hawaii for the first time?
Well, it's like every NCAA tournament we've ever been to. You see an inside of a gym most of the time. Mm. Most people go, oh, Hawaii, oh, Southern California. Well, you know, you go out there and you get in a bus and you go to the gym.
Right.
And you go to the hotel and you go back to the gym. Well, this is really exciting. You got in Fort Wayne. But it was awesome because our chancellor went, Dr. Friedel went, our Coach Johnson's wife and my wife and Coach Franke's, we all went, and we did have a good time other than just volleyball. And actually, we played USC in the semifinals, and we went 4 sets, and it was a big surprise to everybody in the volleyball community that this university that, as they called it, a union, looked like IPFW looks like a union name. Well, that's what they called us. They called us a labor union. Seriously.
I didn't know.
And to be able to go over there and compete at the level we competed at, and it was on national television. I still have the tape. Wow. It was pretty awesome stuff.
And part of the reason why I call it the golden years is a couple reasons. Number one, you have an opportunity to coach your son here because he decided to come to play volleyball for you and not go to Indiana University to play basketball for Bobby Knight. Big story. And the second reason is you start going back to the Final Four each year for 3 out of the 4 years. In 93, you don't go. Did you know that you had something special in your hands to say, okay, we broke through in 91. Can we do it again in 92? And then again, possibly 93, 94?
Well, at that point, you know, the whole culture changes. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. The culture of our program changed. The culture of our community changed in regards to how they looked at us. Because all of a sudden, we're this national competitive team on national television, and we're bringing the USC to town, we're bringing UCLA to town, you know, we're bringing Penn State to town, and not only bringing them to town, but we're competing with them. We're beating them. And all of a sudden players are going, wow, maybe I should take a look at that school. And so by that time we'd already broken into the Puerto Rican pipeline, and when Raul showed up and Norman showed up and Quentin Spiegel and people like that, yeah, along with Loy, you know, we're getting a great feeder system now with really good players. Did I think we could go repeat? You always hope for that, but you're very cautious about that. But that 92 team was a young team with Raul and Norman and all those guys, and they were very, very good athletes and very good players, and obviously Loy made a big difference, and we were good. I mean, we were good that whole 4 years that Loy and Norman and Raul were here, because we were very athletic. We competed at a very high level. We did things that you needed to do in order to be good.
And at that time, you had stopped coaching the women's team.
Correct.
Were you still doing other administrative things around here, like sports information or AD or anything else, or was it just the men's team at that time period?
At that point, I was just coaching the men's team.
Okay.
We had finally, as a university, recognized that one person can't do all these things, or a couple of people can't do all these things, and we had certainly hired some other people, not only to coach the women's team, but we hired Butch Purchin to be the AD, and some other things along it. We hired a sports information director, and certainly at that point, as it is today, athletic training became very, very important. I mean, I used to tape ankles, for God's sake. You know, I used to do all that. So we finally decided that we're going to support the athletic program. And I think a lot of that has to do, and I'm going to be a little boastful here, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that that men's program, women's program to start with, but that men's program who could compete with Ohio State and Ball State and USC, right, all of a sudden got everybody's attention in our community and the administration and said, look, we need to financially support this organization because it can do some great things for this campus, right, and this university. And it has.
And I want to talk about one of the matches, and then I'm going to go backwards for a second. UCLA comes here. You host UCLA here, mm-hmm, because you're getting ready. In 1994, again, you put in another bid to host the national championships at the Coliseum. UCLA comes here to play, and I need you to tell them this story. I've heard it a million times. It's a great story because of the fact, a couple of reasons. Number one, they had to stop allowing people into the facility at least 30 minutes before game time, if not before, because the gym had already been packed. And you had people on the rafters and in the balconies and everywhere. And number two is the fact that Al Skates, the legendary coach at UCLA, had said he would never come back here and play you. Can you tell that story for everybody? Because that's such a great story.
You tell it almost better than I do.
That's such a great story.
UCLA agreed to come because we were hosting the NCAA tournament. And he wanted to play in that facility. Well, we were playing in the Coliseum. But we decided, I guess I decided, that we're not going to play in the Coliseum. We're going to play in the Gate Center instead. So he got here and he went, is this where we're going to play the tournament? I said, no, it's over there, but we're playing here. Well, he said some choice words that I can't repeat. So the game time comes, and here's the other thing about what you just said. we turned people away. It's a good thing the fire marshal didn't show up because we'd have been in big trouble. And it was on television, public television, NBC, not the college access, actually NBC affiliate here in Fort Wayne brought their big truck in, and we televised the game, whoever could get that channel in our community. And we still had all those people here. So the match ends up going 4 sets. And Loy and Jeff Nygaard just were at one another the whole time. I mean, that was their All-American. And it was a great match. I mean, Ken Horman and Blake Sebring did the play-by-play. Ken Horman was hoarse afterwards from yelling into the because you couldn't hear. And the thing is over with. We shake hands, which you could do back then. We didn't have the virus. And Al Skate says to me, "I'll never come back to this damn place ever again." I said, "Okay, see you later." And what's ironic about that is they came back because they came to the tournament in '94. Excuse me. Penn State beat him in the finals. He lost again. And his star player threw the trophy underneath the bleacher and stormed out the Coliseum and couldn't get back in because they locked him out. He had to walk to the hotel.
That national tournament set the attendance record. I don't know if it still stands or not. I think it does. But that national championship tournament set the attendance record for the NCAA attendance record for the tournament. I don't know if that still stands there. I think it still does.
I think it's been broken, but
it might have been broken.
It was the largest crowd for a long time.
Was it the difference maker between that and '88 and hosting in '88? Was it the fact that we were in it because of all the success that we had from '91, '92, '93 up? Combination marketing?
Yeah, it's all those things. I mean, obviously we had been very successful, and we had UCLA here earlier in the year, and we just talked about it, so that got all kinds of publicity, and we were pretty good, obviously. So we got in the tournament, and then of course, you know what happened?
No. With success,
somebody on my team broke his finger and couldn't play very well, and we got beat by UCLA.
With success of the team, obviously, comes some spotlight on you from the volleyball world. You also start coaching internationally. When did the first time you started coaching like the World University Games team or one of the USA international teams? Was that in the 80s or was it around that time in 1991?
1987, I think. 87. I got to go back and think about it for a second.
87.
It was 85 or 87 when we went to Japan with the World University team. Well, Kobe, Japan, first one I did. But I did a lot of Olympic festivals before that. I think I did 6 or 7 of those suckers. And then we started with the World University Games in Japan. And then I did 6 or 7 of those also, along with the Olympics in 2000.
Was that hard to do the international stuff with USA Volleyball and then transition back to coaching the collegiate level?
Well, the hardest part was being away from my family because the one that I coached in South Korea, we were gone for 7 weeks in the summer. But we had a great team too. We competed at a very, very high level. So it kind of depended on the block of training, how long I was gone, and where we trained. But the very first one I did, the one to go to Japan when Kobe with Coach Preston, I had to argue with the administration to let me go because they wanted me to still be here and do my I was still doing some of those administrative duties. And I said to them, I said, "Listen, well, we don't know whether you should go and get paid while you're still working at the university." I said, "Time out. If I do this, first of all, it helps my recruiting tremendously because I get exposed to all these kids all over the country who are very high-level kids. Number 2, I'm representing the US of A, and I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, IPFW. What more do you want?" And they finally agreed that, yeah, that'd be a pretty good thing to do. So I did all those things, and of course, Now I'm all over the country, and I've still got pictures of T-shirts from, let's say, IPFW back when we were yellow and red, of a kid wearing one of our T-shirts in Japan. So, you know, it's that kind of thing that I thought was very important, not only for my own personal career, but for the university as a whole and our community. And I think it turned out to be pretty good.
And as the 90s continue on, yours truly comes. You recruit a kid from Canada, Puerto Rico, Minnesota became a haven, a couple players from out east, I think a Greek, a Jamaican. I mean, you had this multi-ethnic team in the 90s. And then as the golden years for me turn into the glory years, you go back to the Final Four in 99. We should have won in 98. If Ricky Soler doesn't get injured on the very last point, I'm convinced. And no disrespect to Lewis University, but we're going to the Final Four. We're going to the Final Four in 98. We go in 99, and we play this remarkable match in 99. When you have that type of success for 4 or 5 years in the early 90s, then you don't go for a couple years. Does that change you at all? Does that change the program at all in terms of what you're trying to do behind the scenes? And then it's more satisfying to go back to the tournament? Or is it the other way around in terms of, hey, this is something that you got to do on a yearly basis to get to the championship?
You know, when we first started the program in 1981, we were just hoping to win a match. Our goal was to win a match in the conference. And that was our goal. When we got to 1991, now the goal, I'm sorry, when we got to 1986, obviously the goal was to win the MIVA, right? Win the MIVA tournament. When we got to 1991, the goal was to win the national championship. And from 1991, I would assume until today, there's only one goal, and that's to win the national championship. Now, we never did that, but we had 6 opportunities, and we never got that accomplished. But that was always the goal, and if you didn't get the secondary goal of winning the MIVA tournament,
right,
it didn't matter.
Yep.
So it was always disappointing not to be able to compete and win the MIVA tournament, because that's what propelled you into the NCAA tournament. And there was no greater thrill than in 1991 going to the NCAA banquet in Hawaii and introducing my team and my chancellor to the NCAA committee and all those in attendance as being an NCAA Final Four participant. I'll remember it forever. Today I do something else. And each one of those it was just as important. I can remember each one of those tournaments. The one you played in, obviously, in 99, the one in 2007 when we beat Pepperdine. I mean, all of them, 92, 94, they're all very easy to recollect, because that's the ultimate. That's your goal. And then once you get there, the ultimate goal is to winning the tournament.
And I remember in 1999, as part of the banquet that we had prior to leaving, Peyton Manning came and spoke at our dinner thing. Maybe it was the Fort Wayne Sports Corp, maybe it was.
Correct.
We had a banquet, and Peyton Manning was there. He had just left Tennessee
Yep.
to get ready for the Indianapolis Colts. And he spoke, and I remember that as if it were yesterday. That was one of the most amazing things. We go to the tournament in 99, and I know there's a lot of discussion. I think 1992 is the best team ever assembled here. Winning streak, 4 All-Americans on the team. One that came in off the bench was an All-American. Mark Franke believes the 1999 team was the best team ever. Good serving team, good blocking team. But that special team of 07, because they make the breakthrough to get to the national final. We had been a semifinalist 5 times, but they get in. Can you talk about how special that team was and what that was like to beat an adversary you had known for many, 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 many years in Marv Dunphy and Pepperdine because they were number one?
That that group was an interesting group. I got to figure out how to say this. They really didn't care. They didn't care that they were good. They didn't care that they were very talented. They didn't care that they worked really hard. They just wanted to play. They were the most loosey-goosey group of guys I ever had. The 92 team or 91 team was very competitive, very like this. The 2007 team was whatever. Brock Ulrich, whatever. C.C. Macias, if you see him today, he's a bushman and surfboarding in Hawaii. A big bushman. He's like this. But yet they were very competitive, and they had a great cohesiveness about them, the way they played. They didn't know Pepperdine was number one. They didn't care Pepperdine was number one. They just were going to go out and play and have a good time. Same when we Ohio State over at their place to go to that tournament. It was like, okay, here we are. Throw the ball out. Let's go play. And we did. And of course, Colin Lundeen was a tremendous leader on that team. He's a very good athlete. Maybe as good athlete as ever played here. Just pure athleticism.
Yeah.
But that team came together at the right time, and they did the right things at the right time, and you didn't have to beg them to do it. You didn't have to coerce them into doing it. They just did it. And I remember and you probably do too, the fourth set going, we're going to win this thing.
Yeah.
I'm going,
Yeah.
I'm looking up in St. John's Arena going, is the sky going to fall down here or what? Huh? We're going to win this thing. It's on national television. And we're going to be the number one team in the country. And of course we did. And that thing was kind of like the first one in 91. I'm kind of walking around going, okay, I don't know, I got to find somebody to hug or something. It was awesome. It was just awesome.
And because you touched on, I want to touch on a couple of players because I want to get your comments on a couple of players through the years, because you talk about Colin, and there have been so many great, and I've argued this for many, many years. People have always thought, well, the best players have always come out of California, and I go, that's not true. And there have been a lot of great players at many institutions across America, but second to none, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the caliber of players that have gone on to do amazing things and had great careers here. You talk about Colin Lundeen, C.J. Macias. You go back to the early years with Lauren Gebert and Jay Goldstein and obviously Moy and Tony and so forth. I'm going to throw out some names to you and just give me whatever comes to mind when I throw out some of these names.
What you asked for.
Brock Ulrich.
Out of control.
Hector Soto.
Skywalker.
Raul Papaleo.
Smooth. And all the women loved him.
Can you tell the two things about Raul with the net? Through the net. Can you tell that story? And then can you talk about the best play you ever saw?
Well, that's Raul's, both of those.
Right.
I don't even know why this happened. But it was at practice. And of course, Coach Johnson's there and was after practice. And Raul's goofing around doing something. And the next thing we know, he jumps through the net. And Coach Johnson went, what just happened here? I said, I don't know, because I didn't see it. I said, I don't know what. He said, he just jumped through the net. I said, what do you mean he jumped through the net? He said, Raul, come here. So Raul comes over, and between where the net and the pole is at, and then there's a bottom cord and a top cord. He said, jump through there. So Raul jumps up, brings his legs up, and jumps through that thing. Now, that's no way, guys. There's no way you can do that without catching your toes or your head or flipping backwards or whatever. He did it with just like that. Again and again and again. I'm going, okay, enough, this is enough. So then I'm coaching an Olympic Festival team, and Raul's on my team in Texas. And we're playing, big crowd, and Raul goes up to block a ball, and the ball goes off the top of Raul's hands and goes over the scorer's table, up in the air, you know. And next thing I know, Raul's going, he jumps over the scorer's table, literally, plays the ball back into the court. We hit it over, he jumps over the scorer's table, comes running back up and stuffs the ball for a point. And the crowd went crazy, and I just went. Raul could do stuff that no human being could do. He was really smooth. I mean, like I said, and then of course he ended up being on a calendar down in Puerto Rico, and my wife still got the calendar hanging in the closet. I mean, all that stuff.
Norman Almodovar.
Oh my goodness, I got to stop and think for a second. I got a story to tell you about Norman. 1991, NCAA tournament in Hawaii. We had started Norman in the middle for Neil Day, because Neil forgot his shoes back at the hotel. So we started Norman. Norman was awful. I mean, he was awful. Sub, Neil goes in, Norman comes out, sits right down next to me. And he goes, I want to play. And I said, no, you're awful. Get out of here. Get to the end of the bench. So he goes to the end of the bench, and in 2 seconds, he's sitting next to me again. I said, what are you doing here? He goes, I want to play. I said, no, you're terrible. Get out of here. Get to the end of the bench. Down he goes, and swear to God, within 5 seconds, he's sitting next to me again. And he says, Coach, I want to play. Well, I'd had enough. I said, okay, go in there and play. He was great. He was like an All-American. So Norman was very tenacious. That's a true story. I can tell you a lot of stories about Norman. We left him in California one time. He's running down the street trying to catch the bus.
I don't know that
story.
Oh,
yeah, we left him.
I don't know that story.
Oh, he was farting around doing something. We left him.
Most memorable victory that you've ever had coaching here at IPFW?
Well, there are two, and we've talked about them already. First would be the one at 91 to go to the NCAA tournament, and the second one would be the win over Pepperdine in 2007.
This is an interesting question. Loy had an opportunity to go play basketball at IU. He came here. Had Loy gone to play basketball at IU, do you think you would have continued coaching here at IPFW, or would you have tried to venture off and maybe try and do something else to free up your time to go and see him play?
I would have quit. I would have quit coaching here. I'd have found another job, because I missed a lot of Loy's basketball games in high school because I was here. And I told my wife, I'm not going to do that. If he goes and plays basketball in college, I'm going to go see him play. I would have quit coaching.
The national team of Japan came here to play in 1996, 97. They also trained here. Can you talk about how you got Japan to come and play here? That was my freshman year. I remember I was an usher or a ball boy. How did you get Japan to come?
Didn't they come? Didn't they play our national team?
Yeah, our national team here.
Yeah. See, well, by then I was very, very ingrained within USA Volleyball, and they were looking for a place to play Japan in the Midwest on like a tour, and so we volunteered to be one of them. And obviously, with Loy being on the team, we were a natural fit, and so that's how that happened.
Was there any opponent that you wish you would have had an opportunity to play collegiately?
I think we played them all. BYU, UCLA, Irvine, Santa Barbara, Hawaii. I think we played them all,
And everybody?
Brian.
What's your greatest achievement in coaching?
Oh wow,
That's a tough one.
well, that's an easy response. And I think it's true of all people that are involved in coaching or maybe teaching or whatever. It's the fact that I've been able to witness the success of all the young players, male and female, their lifelong successes as they were part of our program. And you know, you're coaching. All those kids, even back when I was teaching high school, all those kids are my kids. Now, obviously, I don't own them. I'm not kin to them or anything, and I didn't 24/7 them. Even though most of those kids here, I 24/7.
Right.
You know, but they're part of my life, and to see them be successful is awesome. To see them, whenever I see them, and sometimes I don't remember all their names anymore, but whenever I see them and they say, "Coach, I know I shouldn't have, I know this, I know that, but thank you." And I think that's true of anybody who's ever involved in coaching. But for 48 years, I tell people this all the time, because I get asked every once in a while, what are your regrets? Kind of like, what is your most, and I say I only have one. I truly only have one regret, and that's that I don't have another 48 years to give to the young people that I was associated with for 48 years.
Did you have any aspirations to coach the USA national team with all your international experience coaching the junior team, the junior national team? Back when you were coaching.
Yeah, we talked about it, but the commitment is pretty overwhelming, especially with your family. You know, and I still had kids at home, and I had to move to Colorado back then, which would be a great place to move.
Yeah.
But I had family here, so, and this was a great job. When I was doing this, and all those years we talked about, and it's changed a little bit now, unfortunately, I was the big fish in a small pond. I like to be in the big fish in the small pond, and that's what we were. And if I go somewhere else, now I'm the little fish in the big pond. Nothing wrong with being a big fish.
Exactly. How have you adjusted to retirement?
In the beginning, not very well. When you spend your whole life doing what I did, you miss it. And I still miss you. I still miss the people I work with, and the players, the travel, and not being able to see my friends, my coaching cohorts. But as it's gone along, it's gotten better. It's gotten easier. I've gotten busy doing other things. You know, obviously, you know, I play a lot of golf. I go fishing. We go to Florida now in the wintertime. So it's gotten easier. But if I could come back and coach today, I would, in a heartbeat.
And you still come to a lot of the matches. You still come to practices. What's your assessment since you've retired, as the last 5 years, going on 6 years? What has been your assessment of the volleyball team and the program, the team and the program?
Well, now you're putting me on the spot. Huh?
I didn't write that question.
Well, we all know it's a difficult process when somebody who's been here as long as I was to retire and go on. So I think I think for you personally, the first year or two is a tremendous learning experience.
Oh, yeah.
But once you get through that learning curve, then you can begin to go back up in the right direction. And I think that's certainly where you're headed. I'm very excited about seeing the team play.
Of all the moments that you've had, you've coached 35 years here, but obviously more through education. How and why volleyball? Why because you played baseball growing up, you played, I think, hockey, maybe even football, basketball. Why volleyball?
Well, I coached basketball in high school, and I coached volleyball in high school, and baseball, but I was still playing. I played till I was 46.
Right.
So volleyball was still in my DNA, I guess. So I kind of gravitated to that only because I was still playing. And I like coaching it. I like the opportunity to develop this program, to build a program, and to not have to leave my home. It just kind of matriculated into volleyball.
And then last question, biggest influence in terms of volleyball? Who was your biggest influence, whether it was as a player or as a coach, that you kind of not either modeled yourself, but at least influenced you in terms of coaching?
Well, the biggest influence as far as my volleyball playing career, instead of starting, was Coach Shondell from Ball State, because he gave me a chance to play. I didn't play in high school. I only started playing when I was a sophomore in college. So it asked me to, but my coaching philosophy actually came from my dad. You know, my dad was a World War II veteran and worked very, very hard on the farm. I worked very, very hard on the farm because we didn't have any choice. And he held me accountable. I mean, I knew that I started driving a tractor when I was 8 years old. I started doing things in the field when I was like 9 or 10 with big machinery, which was not very big back then, but so I had a lot of responsibility. He held me accountable. And I felt that that was my responsibility if I was going into education, was to hold young people accountable. And I think I did that throughout my whole career.
Thank you very much for taking time out to answer these questions and part of the 40th anniversary.
Well, it got me right off the golf course, so what can I say?
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate
it. Thanks,
it.
Ryan.
Thank you.